Hello, and welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, the show that bridges all things mystical with the chaotic and unpredictable experience of being authentically human. I'm your host, Jesse Herman, life coach, energy healer, artist, mother, and channel for the non-physical entity group Vagrein. In other words, I'm some kind of mystic, and so are you. I am so thrilled to bring to you today's guest on the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. Daniel Scranton is a verbal channel, spiritual teacher, and sound healer. He's been channeling the 12th dimensional, non-physical collective known as the Creators since the fall of 2010. Since then, a wide array of other guides and collectives have spoken through him, and some of those include the Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, the Pleiadian High Council of Seven, and the Arcturian Council. He also discovered an ability to channel light languages and healing overtones, and he's used this ability to help others heal themselves and manifest the reality that they desire. Daniel works with individuals in one-on-one sessions, does group events, and teaches a variety of classes, including amazing channeling classes. His daily channeled messages can be found at www.danielscranton.com, and you can also watch him on his amazing YouTube channel. I'm so thrilled to bring Daniel to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast because for the past year, he has been a cheerleader, a source of support, and a source of inspiration for my own channeling journey. And also because this interview was so fun for us to have, and it really is my delight to share it with this audience. So please welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, Daniel Scranton. Welcome so much, Daniel, to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastically well. I flew in like 2 days ago. No, I flew in yesterday. So I got here yesterday morning. So I flew in on 2 consecutive red eyes from Australia to Connecticut.
Wow.
So you can imagine how well I slept last night.
Out like a light. Absolutely. That's great. So you're nice and refreshed. It's good we didn't have to have this meeting right when you landed.
Right. No, I wouldn't have done that.
So, first I want to publicly say an amazing thank you to you because, as you know, I've only sort of become more exposed publicly in channeling in the last year or so. And your support has done a lot for me in that you've been sort of an advocate. You've shared my work with your followers. You've shared my name with some people who are in, the industry or who are in the world. And that has really brought a lot of people who are watching this right now to this particular show and to the work that I'm doing. So I'm so grateful to you. You're like a little guardian angel for me. and it's been such a blessing to get to know you and have you in my life. So I just wanted to say that absolutely out loud for everyone to hear.
Well, prepare yourself for more praise because I'm a connoisseur of channeling. I've got into this stuff 21 and a half years ago, this channeling stuff. And I've come across who I love the most, which is Seth and Bashar. And I feel like your channeling is right up there with those two. And the way that Vagrein answers questions is so up my alley. It's so like, yes, they're answering with the truth, with the truth that as I've come to know it. And the fact that you're a trance channeler, I mean, it's just what you're doing is amazing, and more people need to know about you.
Oh, thanks so much. That's awesome. Well, people who are watching, it's interesting to have this conversation because our channeling styles, if it can even be called that, are very different. And I'm coming at this interview also from a deep level of curiosity on a personal level, like how does he do it? And how do you have access to so many different energies? And how do you, so first though, I want to make sure that we start out with a little bit of your journey, your story. How did you even come to your spiritual journey? How did you come to all of the odder or mystical aspects of life? What was the catalyst? What was the jumping off point? Can you share a little bit about that for our listeners?
I would have to say that, I know we kind of choose our lives beforehand. And so I knew that I know now I must have chosen to be a seeker, to be someone who would always be looking because I grew up Catholic. I didn't grow up in this house. This is the house I lived in for 4 years, my high school years. But prior to this, living in the next town over and going to church every single Sunday and having it really ingrained into me, that Catholic belief system, and then going to Catholic high school on top of that. And so I always felt like I was interested in religion and what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to please God and all that sort of stuff, and was terrified of God, as a result, just thinking like I'm probably not good enough, I'm probably not doing enough, I'm a horrible sinner. And then basically going to Boston University and abandoning everything, because as soon as I learned in my Greek and Roman myth classes that, oh, everybody has this myth. It's not just in the Bible, it's everywhere, all across cultures, all across time. Everyone's talking about the flood, everyone's talking about creation. Some of them even have a savior type person who dies and resurrects 3 days later. So it was like, in Greek mythology, it was Dionysus. And if I ever had a son, I was going to name him Dionysus. By the way, I love that name. So that led me to atheism. So I was atheist after that. So I went religious, atheist. Then I woke up right around the year 2000 with the help of Deepak Chopra, because I'm a very logical, mathematical, pragmatic person. And when you prove with me with quantum physics,
Yeah.
how the universe really is, how it really works, then I start to think about the more possibilities for, life continuing after we shuffle off the mortal coil. And so I continued down the Deepak Chopra rabbit hole, and that, expanded out to include Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass and Yogananda and all these other teachers, Eckhart Tolle. And then I found Conversations with God. And in those books, I was completely blown away. I was just blown away. I didn't think of it as channeled material until someone that I was close to, a spiritual teacher / friend of mine, said, "Oh, you like channeled material, do you?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, I guess it is channeled, isn't it?" And she turned me on to the Emmanuel's books, which is this woman only channeled like 3 of these books. They're really nice, they're very poetic. But on the back of one of them, there's a mention of the Seth material. And that's when I got into Seth. And then Seth blew my mind on so many other levels than Conversations with God did, and is still doing so, because now I've found people on YouTube who are reading the Seth books.
Oh.
And so I get to listen to the Seth books now, and just love them to death. And yeah, so that led me to Abraham. So then somebody in a Seth chat room kind of message board place said, "You really have to check out Abraham. You have to check out Abraham." So then when I checked out Abraham, I loved Abraham. And then Esther happened to still be alive. So that was a big advantage for her over Jane, over me
Yes.
to be completely enthralled by Jane Roberts. So I started going to Abraham workshops, and I did hundreds of them in the US. I did 8 cruises. And on one of those cruises, I started to feel things. I felt energy for the first time, doing Reiki on someone that was also there for the Abraham, workshops. And then I started doing Reiki more because I liked that feeling. And then things started happening in my Reiki where my hands would go like this, and I wasn't moving them. I was just watching it happen. And then my head went like this. And then my lips started to move and went, and I said, "Oh, wow, I can channel?" Like, it never even occurred to me that I was going to channel someday. Like, as into it as I was, this is 2010. So I was into it for, at that point, let's say about 8 years. And as much as I loved it and everything, it wasn't a time when every other person you met was channeling. It was like really rare for someone to be channeling.
So you would say that like the moment you first realized was during that moment where your hands were moving, where your head is moving, and what were the challenges and doubts you faced? Because I know that's a big topic. When people's gifts are turning on, there's a flood of insecurity, of doubts, of fears. And also I know that you teach, this kind of work, you teach channeling, and you must also have a lot of contact with people who do present these doubts to you and these fears and stuff. But I'd love to know on a personal level, and then the doubts and fears that you see most commonly.
Yeah, that may be why I'm here. That may be my whole purpose, is to help people with those, because I have taught so many people how to channel, and I love it. And I love when I both love and hate when somebody starts channeling and I feel like they're better than me already. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, like this is so good. And it doesn't happen every time, but I'll just finish the story of how I started, because I
Yes, please.
wasn't doubting any of that. That was all like, there's nothing to doubt. Like, this is really happening, and this is January 2010. March 2010 rolls around, and at this point, I'm at the low point in my life. I'm 37. I've um I've been in a marriage that has not been good for a while, and that showed no signs of ever being able to get better. We were drifting apart, and yet I could not bring myself to say, hey, let's end this. It's the humane thing to do, because I figured she might hurt if I did that, and I couldn't be responsible for that. So on top of that, I was hurting myself because I had a hernia, or at least I think it is a hernia, because I've never actually been to a doctor for it. But but it's this pain that I get next to my belly button sometimes. And I was at the time moving a lot of boxes around, because I had an eBay Amazon business, and I had over 11,000 items I was selling, and they were in boxes. And so I'd have to move boxes around when I'd have my shipping days. And on a day when I was in particular amount of pain from this, and not wanting to seek medical attention for it because I was scared of what they would say and do, I just lay in bed and cried and wanted to end my life. I just felt like this is it. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And it wasn't that night, but it was the next night that I got the life-changing experience of um, having a dream. And in my dream was Abraham's cinematographer, Peter Beamish. And I look at him in the dream. He's just me and him standing in a desert. And he's a guy who I knew was into ETs. I was never into it. I was like, okay, they exist. Who cares? And he was. So he's the one who shows up in my dream. I turn to him and I go, I understand now about the other beings. And that was it. That was the whole dream. And I wake up from that, and I feel this energy at the crown of my head, and it starts to come through me down to my feet. And it does so over and over again in waves that were complete ecstasy. It was like having 1,000 orgasms at once. It was unbelievably good feeling, to the point where I was arching my back on the bed going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That was the only way I could respond to it. But then I started to think about it and go, I wonder what this has to do with that dream. I thought it was a healing at first. I thought at first, like, oh, they're healing me now of this hernia or whatever, because I've asked, because I was an Abrahamer. So in the Abraham tradition, you ask and it is given. You ask, and eventually you lay down your resistance enough so that it can come in. So I thought, oh, this is all that asking I've been doing, because this thing's been going on for years. And and then I thought, what does this have to do with that dream? What does this have to do with aliens? And as soon as I thought the word aliens, huge surges started coming through, so that I just keep repeating the word aliens, 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 because I thought, like, I'll get more if I do that. And then I started asking them questions in my mind. The whole time my eyes are closed, I'm asking questions in my mind. I'm getting a huge surge if it's a yes. So they didn't say yes to "Are you here to heal me?" They did say yes to "Are you here to play with me?" And then I, would ask, like, "Are you in another dimension? Can I see you?" And I thought maybe I would see them in the room when I
Hmm.
opened my eyes. So I open my eyes and I start looking around. I don't see anything, but the flooding starts happening again. The energy's flooding into my body. And I don't know exactly how long this went on for, but it felt like probably a lot longer than it was. Eventually, I had to get up out of bed because it stopped, and basically dedicate myself at that point to getting that feeling back.
Wow.
Like whatever I have to do to feel that good again, I'm going to do it. So basically, I was a chronic meditator. I was meditating for the past 10 plus years every day, at least 45 minutes to an hour. And I just added more time to it. But in that time I added to it, the idea was not just to meditate, but to feel something again.
So that's a fascinating story, and also I can totally relate with that that space maybe right after the energy comes through, that there's a clearing, when you had that down period, right? But also that it sounds almost like they were, whatever is coming through you or was ever coming through you at that time was then lifting you up and telling
Yeah.
you, hey, you have a collaboration. So that energy that was given to you, I can also understand why it wasn't given consistently, because then there's lots of work to do when you're a channel to actually get into alignment and be available all the time. So you channel so many different things.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a bit about that? Because I only have access to Vagrein's energy, even though I had like issues with ghosts and stuff like that when I was a kid. I can understand the difference in frequency, and the ghost frequency I turn off completely. I don't do any mediumship
Oh,
or ghost type of stuff. But what I do access when I'm channeling is Vagrein, and that's always in trance. But for
mm.
you, you've got like the Arcturian Council, you've got the Pleiadians, the Archangels, you've got Yeshua, you've got so much going on. So, what was the first energy that you could identify that came through, and how was that relationship created? Did you understand it right away? Did you know who and what it was? How did that work?
Okay. So I'll very quickly wrap up the how I started, which is that then 7.5 months later, the only thing that really happened in those 7.5 months was that I would start to dry heave when I'd get really deep into it, like really deep into meditation, really deeply connected. I started dry heaving. So I'm at an Abraham workshop in October 2010, and it starts happening. And so I luckily get in the hot seat the next day, and I ask them what's going on, and they're saying, I'm like, basically, Abraham, what's going on with me? Because I already had asked them about the alien incident, but I left all the alien stuff out because I know they're not into that.
Yeah,
So this time I'm like, what's going on here? They said, you're going to do this thing that Esther does, and you just have to work through the resistance that's in your body to it.
right.
I can't remember if they said in your body or just your resistance, but I thought, okay. So I went home and started practicing, and this is what me practicing looked like.
Yeah.
Because the energy would just do that. I later came to recognize they were also really trying to get me to do this, like always wanting, because when you do this, your left and right hemispheres of your brain sync up. And instead of having two brains, a left and a right, you have one brain, because there's something called the corpus callosum that separates the two hemispheres.
Hmm.
And it really does create like these two, that's why people say, oh, he's very left brain, she's very right brain. Well, if you then have one brain instead of two, your brain is your radio. It's your receiver
Right.
for what you're getting. So you kind of need it to be, you know, whatever, operating at the highest potential. So that's what I think they were doing. So eventually, I spoke for my ex. I had a fiance at the time in London who would sit there on Skype and just patiently wait and watch me make all these faces. And then I eventually spoke. And the first time I spoke, they said, "We are here for you."
Right.
And I knew I didn't say it.
Right.
So I was like, okay, this is real. Everything else after that felt counterfeit. So
Hmm.
that's the part, your first question, which is, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do with the fact that if you're a conscious channeler and you're a trance channeler and I'm a conscious channeler, and yet we still can love each other. We don't have to be like,
No,
like
I don't
looking
think
at
there's
each
any
other
difference.
like
I think it's
that.
almost
I
like
know, I'm
it's
just
almost like
kidding.
a choice. It's weird because you know what's interesting about your story? I can look back because I have the first transmission. I
Uh-huh.
think that the first words out of my mouth were also "We are here,"
Yeah.
or "We are here
And
for you," because I
so
know
many.
that first transmission was all for the reassurance of me as the channel, and I think it's even in the book. I could probably look it up really quickly, but it's fascinating that that was also the first sort of messages that you were able to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, in the book, which the Seeking book, Seeking Ends, I I've only read a bit of it, and the little bit that I read, the part where they say, where Vagrein says, um, you can decide whether this is real or not, and whichever you decide is what it will be. It helped me so much, even though I've been doing this for over 13 years.
Oh, wow.
I still like getting some kind of confirmation, validation, some kind of like boost to let me know, like, okay, it is real,
Yeah.
even though I think, and this is something that maybe nobody in the channeling community talks about. I do think there's channeler error. I do think that
Mhm.
exists.
Yeah.
And if Michael Jordan can have an off night and shoot like 3 for 20 from the field, which he may only have only done once, then I can have an off night. Esther can have an off night.
Yep.
You can have an off night.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a lot going on in our lives too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you get me on a good day like today, and I'll probably do a lot better than if I just got like really bad news or just got into a fight with somebody or
Sure.
something. You know what I mean? So I
I,
do
I
think,
totally agree with you.
yeah,
And I also think that's why it's so important to remind whoever's listening to any channeled material that it really is whatever resonates with them. The source itself doesn't matter because we don't have like scientific information about the sources of anything. But if the message is resonant and it improves your life and it helps you in some way and it helps you to dismantle some belief that's not serving you, then that is wonderful stuff. But I think it gets into that tricky gray area when you take any information, whether it's channeled material or something somebody wrote, as dogma. If you're going to take something and apply it to your life arbitrarily without checking in with yourself, I don't think there's a single source of information that's actually healthy to do that with. It doesn't matter how good the
oh,
channel is, or even if it's messages directly from, the universe. You got to check in with yourself because we're all,
right.
an aspect of that universe. So it's really important. And I totally agree with you. There's always that aspect of not even the filter, but they're using our brains to
Yeah.
channel, right? Like I was told I had to learn a better vocabulary when I first started channeling. They had me
Really?
reading the thesaurus, like literally going
Really?
like you need more words in your head. You don't need to know them to use
Oh.
every day, but you definitely need to read this book. And I was like, you're crazy, and I
I
do
told
I
a
do
client,
agree with you with the ability to have an off day. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I told a client of mine who approached me and said, I want to ask whoever I was channeling, I want to ask whether so and so is molesting so and so. And I was
Okay.
like, Nope.
It's
I
not
said,
going to
I
work.
can't do it. I can't do it because now I know that that question is coming. It's too much pressure. I
Right.
ruin potentially someone's life with
Yeah.
the answer. And if I get it wrong,
Mhm.
ruin the wrong person's life. I can't channel
Yeah.
that,
Well,
like,
Vagrein has this strong free will aspect. They won't answer questions on third parties at all. And
oh,
they explain the reason why, like they come a lot. Also, being in trance, I can't really filter, right? But they will not answer a third party question. What they will do is redirect whoever's asking back to the reasons why they want to know, or their own intuition, or whatever's going on, right? Which is
right.
interesting to even watch. When I watch those back on replays, it's like, wow, that's really, I don't even know how to, I don't even know what word it is, but they do come
Helpful.
back to,
No, it's more helpful to give the answer that teaches the person how to fish.
yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's the fishing lesson. Exactly. So,
I was like, is this real? When this person asks about their past lives and they're getting answers, I can't prove it. I don't know if I'm making it up. So I luckily had an Obi-Wan Yoda type person at that time that I was working with, named Nora Harold. And she's a beautiful human being and a beautiful channeler herself and teacher. And she was encouraging me to keep going, even though I was like, I just don't want to do this if I can't know if it's true. And poor Jane Roberts, she thought she was going crazy,
right.
perhaps, or that it's another aspect of her personality, so it doesn't count. So she's like, I'm going to test myself. So she did. That's why I was asking you, that person's testing you
Yeah.
to see if this is real, instead of tuning into whether what they're feeling is telling them that they
Hmm.
should continue to follow this Jessica Herman chick,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it, that's what you have to do. Because
Yeah.
like I've sat with Bashar in 3 private sessions in Daryl's house. And I love, he's my favorite. He's my absolute favorite living channeler. Never did I feel like Bashar knew every single thing about Daniel David Scranton.
Right. Right.
No, never got even the slightest clue of that.
Right.
And this is the one that I love the most. Like, and I remember sitting in the hot seat with Abraham one time, and they didn't understand what I meant by something. And I was like, how is that possible?
Right. Yeah.
But I now know that you can be a tremendous teacher as a channel being and not know everything,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
I think that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, that spectrum of like what is accessible and what isn't, and
Yeah.
then because of also the fact that we're talking about a non-physical energy. So it's non-temporal, or not every energy that's channeled is maybe there are, like, for example, in terms of like star species, star beings, there are other beings who do have physical bodies at some space or time, but some energies don't even have time. Right? They don't have time, they don't have space, they have infinite potential. So how do you ask a question about what's going to happen on Tuesday? Because this being now has been opened up for every possible future Tuesday, and they can see all of them. The only real answer is the one that you're most likely to cement into your reality. So it's really interesting to see that, and to see the differences in terms of what's around when that kind of question comes up. So that's very funny.
Well, that's something that I teach in my courses too. Is I learned so much from another channeler, Lisa Royal Holt, who's
Mhm.
also up there in my top. She's in the top of the people out there doing this work, which is one of her workshops I downloaded the recording of and listened to. The being she channels is a Pleiadian named Sasha. She channels more than that, but Sasha said to this person in answering the question, well, just because I'm a channeled being doesn't mean I know everything. And then another time, I think it was when I was having a private session with her channeled being, either Sasha or Jermaine, and they said to me, well, the higher self of the person you're channeling for is also there.
Mhm.
And they're also, and Bashar has said, when you're talking to him, you're talking to your higher self.
Mhm.
So the higher self of the person being channeled for is also determining what
Yes.
they can get, what is okay to
Yes,
give them. The
absolutely.
example I always give is like, let's say they got your soulmate's name and number and email address and physical address, and they could just give it to you, but it would be 6 months too early.
Right, exactly.
Now you have it, and you want to go knock on that door. You're lonely as hell, and you want to go find your soulmate, and you're going to have this amazing relationship and all this great sex and get married and have kids, and like, but it's not the right time.
Yeah.
So even though that information may be right there sitting above your shoulder for them to grab and just give you, they shouldn't.
No, and that is 100% true. And that's what I also love about being a trance channel as opposed to a conscious channel. Because sometimes after a session, I'll have the answer to the question the person asked that Vagrein didn't give them.
And what do you do with it?
It depends, right? Because coming from me, the thing can be taken in a way that like doesn't have the same weight, right?
Of course.
Coming from Vagrein, it would have a weight that is much heavier, and the person might take it seriously, right? So there's some things like, I call them impressions. If I see something specific, or there's been a specific question, etc., then maybe I'll have a little bit of a chat with the person afterwards. But like if someone's asked me if there was someone who asked where their USB key had fallen, like they'd lost a very important USB key, and Vagrein just would not tell them. Vagrein wanted them to learn how to remote view. Right? They were like, this is a perfect opportunity. And they started doing a whole teaching on remote viewing. The person got frustrated and left the group because it was a group session. And after the session, I was like, guys, it's in his boot. Like I could see it during the session.
And it was?
Well, I don't know, because the person never came back.
And you couldn't contact them. Okay.
No.
Yeah, no, I like doing that too, because I'll give you an example. This is only a few years into me being a channeler. And at that time, the doubt was very strong still. And not that it's gone completely away, but somebody asked a question, and when somebody comes to an event and they just go, just tell me what I need to know, or something like that, just, I'm not going to give you anything to go on, but I just want to hear what I'm supposed to
Hmm.
hear. But somebody said that in a group event, but it was like directed towards their guides. Like, what do my guides want to say to me? And what I got in my mind's eye was, because I download things here, which helps while I'm channeling, helps me to verbalize, because one thing that and I know, maybe not everybody knows, is we're not just sock puppets, and they're not just a hand coming in and going and working our vocal cords and getting us our to say everything. It's a collaboration, and we're coming up with the words for the things that we're getting. And so I'm seeing her guys play soccer, and what I allow myself to verbalize was, they're telling you to play more. Then afterwards, I went up to her, and she's a friend of mine I still keep in touch with.
Hmm.
Um, I said, your guides were playing soccer. And she's like, oh my God, I used to play soccer at university. It's like a big part of my, past and everything, to play. And I just was like, oh, thank God,
Yeah.
like, it's real. Like, I got
Yes.
something that was real. And now I rely so heavily on those visuals to help.
I think that those visuals and also even that confirmation that you have if you do voice it afterwards is almost a gift for the channel as well, because it does allow you to know that it's real, right? We will always have that doubt. So back to the question of the doubt. It's like, have I just gone crazy? Am I just accessing another part of my own psyche that thinks that there's another energy coming through? What's going on really, and we don't have enough scientific explanation for like, how does this work in the world, right? Although there is like the Center for Noetic Studies and there are researches being done on channels,
Right,
um,
right.
we don't
I'm
have this
sure that,
information yet. So
yeah.
each channel has their own unique set of doubts, and when you do get one of these confirmations, you hit the mark, or it's made a change for someone's life, or there has been something weird like the soccer thing going on, I think that that's almost in part a gift to not only the person you're sharing with, but also like going like, okay, actually, there's no way I could have made that up. Like, there's no way I could have invented that. There's no way I could have created that. And I have a couple stories that are similar, and I
Yeah,
know that I really cherish them, because they're the
yeah.
ones that convinced me that it's okay to keep going. It's okay to be this figure for these people and stuff like that. So, and
Yeah.
so back to all the different
Multiple entities.
beings that
Right,
you channel.
over here. I was channeling the creators. I eventually got the name the creators. So I'm channeling them. I'm like, who are you? My ex is calling them grandpa. I'm like, that's okay. I'll stick with grandpa, because they told me, I'm sitting there on an Abraham cruise. So I went on a few cruises after I started channeling too. And I'm sitting there in my room in the dark going, tell me your name. I want a name. I want a name. And this is what I channel. And this is one of those times where you channel, where I channel and I go, I definitely didn't say that. It was, I said this out loud, pick a friggin', pick a friggin', pick a friggin', pick a friggin'. That's exactly it. That's all I channeled. So I was like, oh, they want me to pick a name for them.
Or that was their name.
They're not saying fucking, they're saying friggin'. so then no, I never thought that was their name.
Okay.
Then it took me till like 2012, like I was a good year and a half or so into channeling before I did a writing exercise I think Nora Harold had given in one of her workshops, and I wrote out the creators. And then I was like, okay, it's a good enough name. But I wasn't blown away or thinking like, I really got it nailed. Then at that time in my life, I was buying up bags, like trash bags full of used Legos on eBay, because I just wanted to relive that part of my childhood where I just sat on the floor with a big pile of Legos and would like, you know, paw through them. These are the times when I was in my room as a kid, like thinking about God and like fear of God and stuff. I'm also playing with Legos like that. So I would go on eBay, and I did it a few times prior, to this, and I would just type in the word Legos and see what would come up, because I just wanted the bags of views. I didn't want to build the Millennium Falcon as much as I love Star Wars. I wanted to do my own thing. And so what came up the next time I searched after I got the name The Creators, there's all these Lego sets called Creator.
Yeah.
So it's creator, 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 like line after line. And I'd never noticed it before
Right. Wow.
in the other churches. So I thought, okay, there's your confirmation.
Oh,
So I
beautiful.
stuck with it. And they were the first. And I channeled them exclusively for 3 years. And then on a hike that I'm about to go back to this hike, by the way, because when I go back to Australia, I'm going to stop in Los Angeles along the way. And I'm going to be hitting my old stomping grounds and stuff. And I'm going to go on this hike where I met Ophelia the fairy for the first time. So on this hike, which I would do every day, and I was the only person, I only saw like a handful of people in the year I did this hike every day. And so I'd go through this part of the hike where I would always think, this is where the fairies are.
Hmm.
This is where they live, or this is where their most densely populated area is. So I would take off my sandals and I would walk slowly and barefoot through the fairy realm. And then eventually thought, maybe I can see one, feel one, channel one. And the first thing I would do is I would laugh. And the next thing I would do is I would tone. And it's a very high pitched tone. It's much different from the tones that the creators make through me and others. And finally, there was this, after the fairy realm, there was this spot where there was this giant tree. And sometimes I would go and sit under the tree, and sometimes I would lie down, and sometimes I would fall asleep under this tree. So this was the tree I chose to channel Ophelia for the first time. And she came through me verbally and announced her name was Ophelia. And I'm a big Shakespeare guy. I think I already mentioned Shuffle Off This Mortal Coil once. So I will make Shakespeare references from time to time. So I love Shakespeare. But so of course, when I hear the name Ophelia, the doubt is that like, oh, okay, well, yeah,
Right.
Ophelia's Hamlet's girlfriend. And um, anyway, so that was about 2012. A year later, I started channeling her regularly. And so I left that on the shelf. Like I did it, but I didn't do anything with it. And then I started channeling her regularly in 2013 for the daily messages that I still put out today. And she's great. I mean, I loved channeling her. I love the feeling of her. I love the femininity. I get super feminine when I channel her. Not that I'm already not feminine, but I do like bring out that side of myself so much that my voice goes up all the way to like Marilyn Monroe, like it's that high. And so it's funny that I actually met a client in the past year who is like, yeah, I've been channeling Ophelia for 25 years.
Wow.
And so he'd been channeling Ophelia 10 years before I started, 12 years before I started. And he said to me that that's how he found me
Hmm.
online, and that he asked her about me, and she goes, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. So again, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
not deluding myself that this is real. And so she was the first, and then all the others came later. And there's like a different story behind each one. Some of
Sure.
them came to me, and sometimes I would seek them out. I
Hmm.
would go, okay, now I know I can channel Ophelia, I can channel the Hathors, and I can channel Archangel Michael. I wonder who else I can channel. And actually, one of my ex-wives, because I have two, said to me one time, would you channel Archangel Gabriel for me? And
Hmm.
I said, okay. And I go in the channeling state like I always do. And Gabriel comes through as a female. And I'm like, well, that's weird because the name Gabriel is a male name. And so then after I came out and I Googled it, and it said in New Agers kind of think Gabriel is female and it's Gabrielle.
Wow.
So that was a confirmation for me too. Like, cause didn't know that
Right.
yet. That's how I channeled her. So, or them. It's really a them. It's not even a gendered being, but I think that they do have more of a masculine or feminine tinge to them,
Mhm.
the different beings out there. Um, and with the Arcturians, who are like the ones I'm most known for, I basically I get the idea sometimes to channel a group or a being, and I'll go, I think I should channel Arcturians. I want to channel Arcturians, but then I put it off for a while. Like I
Mhm.
don't do it.
Sure.
I kind of play around it. Interestingly enough, it was around the time my wife and I met, my current and final wife met, which was 2016. And she was channeling them too. Like she channeled them, I think, shortly after we met. And what I liked about the Arcturians was, first of all, everybody else seemed to be channeling Pleiadians. So I kind of liked being different, and then
Mhm.
also uh, their messages tended to be more topical, like this is what's going on now, as opposed to like when I channel anybody else, it was more like general teachings, kind of like here's how you deal with this issue and that issue in your life.
So you channel every day and you put out your daily messages. In fact, I wanted to inform everyone to head over to your website and to sign up for those because you have like mails that go out every day. You have discounts for people when they sign up. So definitely that's something everyone should check out. But you wake up in the morning, you do your channeling when you start your workday, and then you create it to publish online, to get on Instagram, to share with people, and then you do the rest of your day. So what does the rest of your day look like? Like what does how do you ground yourself if that's even needed? How do you manage your family and relationships and everything that you're doing? How do you manage the business? That kind of stuff.
Actually, it's changed over the years. So
Mhm.
I used to do it 365 days a year with maybe skipping a day or two here or there because I would do it. There was one point when I was doing it on my hikes, and then there was another once I started doing them on camera, which I started 5 years ago, doing them on camera because I would always do them on my phone. I didn't want to have to deal with like
Mhm.
setting up for a camera and all that stuff. So I would just do them on my phone and then take them home and transcribe them. But once I started doing them on camera, I would do them after my wife and daughter went to sleep.
Okay.
So I was doing them late, but then I was staying up so late
Sure.
as a result, transcribing and posting and all that stuff. And I realized like I can't go on like this. So I stopped doing them super late at night, and I started to do them right after I'd finished with my last client. And then I've recently realized like I need to help out more with parenting, and I can't. And my wife is I can't work more than an 8 hour day because I was working more than an 8 hour day to
Mm.
do. And so I've been squeezing them in between clients basically, where I only have a 20-minute break. So I'll just do my channel. They're not that long, they're generally 10 to 12 minutes. So I'll squeeze it in between clients. I'll transcribe and put it out there. But yeah, it is a juggling act for sure. And there's lots of times when I go on the business end of it, like I want to do this, I want to do that, but I have to find the time
Mhm.
to it, to like offer that, create that course, whatever.
Yeah.
And luckily, what I've come to realize about my life too, as I sit here in this house, is like in 2010, that was the year. That was the year when everything happened. That was the year my dad contacted me and said, I have all these baseball cards. They're taking up so much space in the house. They are a burden, because if I ever want to move, I can't just move. I can't just leave with all this stuff in the house. And you're going to get them all someday anyway. Why don't you sell them? Give your sister 20%. So this is at the very beginning of me starting to channel. I'm being supported
Mm.
by sports cards and memorabilia that my dad accumulated over 10 years when he had a store here in Connecticut. And it was crazy how that worked out, how I
Right.
was able to transition from doing my eBay Amazon business to being a full-time working channeler who was able to support himself and my second wife, because we had moved from California to Hawaii, and I had to rely on that income eventually to support us
Yeah.
because the baseball card money eventually ran out. I mean, I kind of spent it like a crazy person at certain points, just buying pair of jeans after pair of jeans, just 'cause I could, and and over tipping and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so uh that all worked out, and
Yeah.
it seems like it always does, like us getting our house that we just got in Australia, that was the exact number that the bank approved us for. They kind of approved us for a little bit less than I would have gotten approved for in the US, because they thought, oh, he's going to started getting taxed here in Australia, which is higher, and all that stuff. And uh the house itself, was it's so perfect, and
Mm.
the fact that we were able to get it with help from my clients, because I reached out on my list. I don't know if you were on my list at this time. This was in November of last year. I said to everybody, hey, like, we're moving to Australia. If you ever felt inclined to give me a donation, now's the time,
Mm-hmm.
because
Beautiful.
like I had to satisfy this bank,
Yeah.
going over every single line item in my bank statement and going, oh, wait a minute, you owe credit cards money? You have a
Right,
loan with
right.
the bank too? Like, we don't feel comfortable giving you this $1.68 million loan
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to hand you if you are paying these other people
Sure,
off.
sure,
So
sure.
I had to pay off a lot of stuff, and my clients stepped up, and I had the biggest month of my life by far in
That's
November,
beautiful.
because I asked for help,
Yeah.
and got it,
And we're able
and
to receive it too,
through the
There's
loan.
also
Yeah, I
that.
know. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I feel like I've just been taken care of in so many ways, like the perfect teacher showing up for
Yeah.
me, at the perfect time. And you're finding this too
Yeah.
now with Mike Dooley and Alex Ferrari
Yep.
and myself, like helping you to get out there more, because we
It's
see the
beautiful.
kind of
And
light
it
that you
it
are.
really does require that first leap of going, you know what? I it really is about accepting you don't know, right? When I first started
Mhm.
channeling, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees, but there's something in you that knows that you just have to do that thing. And it could be channeling, could be art, it could be music, it could be anything in life. Like nobody's restricted to, one medium. It's not like everyone is going to be a channel, but a lot of the people listening are ultimately going to have access to that, and it is really taking that leap. And all of those teachings, whether it's Abraham or Seth or what you're sharing, what I'm sharing, people can start really trusting them and applying them to your life. I think we have a lot of information, and now we're in that era of going, you know what? Maybe I can trust the law of attraction. Maybe I can trust that I can follow my heart or my guidance and everything will work out, and stop looking, at my circumstances to dictate my
Right.
future.
That's
And
so
that's so
true too,
nice.
because I feel like that trust element is what, and faith, and the two go kind of hand in hand. And I think patience is an
Yeah,
element too, to
absolutely.
weave in there, because yeah, because I didn't meet my current wife till I was 43. Even though I had had other marriages, they were kind of disasters, and like and have my child until I was 46. And like all uh, these things take time to
Right.
unfold,
Yeah.
and like with the house, we had this rental that we were going to have to give up January 18th, and we closed on the house we bought January 10th. Now, so that's 8 days difference. And if we hadn't had a place to live after the rental, we would have had to have like Airbnb'd it or
Yes.
something. We have two cats too, and it's
Right.
like there's a whole, it would have been a major pain in the ass not to have a house to move into after this 10-month rental. And, the house on Maui took a year to sell. So we had to have all that patience and all that faith
Yeah,
that it
sure.
would sell, and we didn't have to like lower the price to sell it or anything like that.
So the podcast is called Some Kind of Mystic. What does the word mystic mean to you or evoke in you or stimulate?
I'll tell you what it does. I think of Led Zeppelin's Misty Mountain Hop. I know I think of like, but I do think of mist in that sense. Of like it's mystical, but what's mystical is like for me is like being in a forest and like being in a foggy forest and like all the and like exploring exploring our consciousness. I think that's probably why I'm also very interested in like going on hikes where there's a possibility that I could get lost.
Hmm.
Like to me, if you take me to a forest and and the trails are all paved and it's like there's arrows and direction everywhere and it's telling you like, oh, and this is a blah 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 tree, you know, and that's not fun. Like
No.
I want to go out there and maybe never come back.
Right.
And
Wow.
that's kind of how I feel about the mystical journey. You know, Star Wars is very mystical to me. It's a journey into consciousness that um, has no end. You know, and we're all meant to explore that side of ourselves and not just be here like earning a living and getting a nice car and getting a nice house and having a nice TV and eating at restaurants. Like that's all great. And I love all that stuff. I love all those aspects of life. But that's the quote unquote American dream that I think we're now meant to be going beyond and seeing like, hey, there's way more than just like having stuff and retiring and then golfing and then dying, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where can
You're an artist, and I love that. So, you know, I know that channeling has other outlets, right? So it's not just about giving people information that then they can apply to their lives if they do it, you know, if they receive it appropriately. But we also can channel things like art, and we can channel things like stories,
hmm
and we can channel codes and music. And Lee Harris is this, you know, musician too. Like I think he was into music before he was into
Yeah.
channeling, if I remember his story right. And you were into art
Hmm.
before you were into channeling. I was into screenwriting. Like I wrote 25 screenplays that are full-length features, you know, back in my 20s and 30s. And then Daryl Anka is still a filmmaker.
Right.
No, he still works in the industry. So I think that you know, we also download things and channel things all the time that maybe we don't consider to be that. You know, we don't think of it as channeled material until we do something with it and then people start responding to it and they respond to it in ways that maybe they can't even understand. Like you can go to a museum and look at a piece of art that's hanging on a wall and you can have like an art history person standing next to you telling you what it's all about, but they can't experience it the way you're experiencing it,
Yeah.
you know? So that artist was channeling something into that, including their own emotions and things they were going through. I mean, if you look at a Jackson Pollock, of course, anyone could do that.
Yeah.
But what makes his valuable and unique is that he was obviously infusing something into it that only he could infuse.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've always been impressed by people who can create art. Like that's super impressive to me because I can draw Snoopy and you know like I can draw a tree, but that's kind of like I have certain limitations in what I can draw.
Sure.
But to know that like you have that gift too, I think is it's nice also knowing that about a channeler. Like this isn't the only thing that Jessica can do. You
Mm,
know, it's not like she has to do it because she has other skills as well.
yeah.
And I don't know. I for some reason I just wanted to say all of that.
You know, it's interesting. I think you might be channeling right now because when you when you were saying that, I suddenly remembered when I was about, I guess I was in grade 7, so I'd be about 13 years old. I woke up one morning and I could suddenly draw.
Mm.
And up until that point, I could draw like, yeah, stick figures. I was interested in drawing, but my brother was always better than me and this and that and the other thing.
Oh,
And I
really?
wanted so badly to be able to draw. And at the time when it happened, and later on, you know, the only thing I could equate it to was the equivalent of like a walk-in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now I'm thinking, actually, that is channeled. Like now that you're saying it, I couldn't naturally with talent draw, but then I went on to study illustration because I love drawing so much, right? And I remember literally the day, and it was right around when my grandmother died. So I think she had just died, and then suddenly I could draw, right? Which was so,
Whoa.
so weird. And I completely forgot about that up until just now. So thank you very much for reminding me of that.
Very
That is
interesting.
very interesting. Yeah.
The walk-in thing is crazy. I think there's a lot that I don't like, by the way,
Okay.
about Dolores about Dolores Cannon's work. Like
Right.
I respect what she was doing and what a lot of what came out of it. But and then there's other things I'm like, well, that's kind of almost harmful
Mm-hmm.
for people to think that other people aren't real as they pass them in their street
Uh,
is not a helpful. It doesn't help us all become one. It doesn't
right.
help with
Right.
the unity consciousness thing to think, oh, that's just a background actor in my story. But which unfortunately is one of the takeaways that people
Okay.
have from the work. Yeah. But one of the good things is that she channeled about, because there's, I think within the walk-in phenomenon, there's also like, okay, maybe just more of your soul came
Mm-hmm.
to join the
Yeah.
body when you were 7, and it didn't have to be a trade like
Yeah.
the Mets trading to the Cardinals, you
Sure.
know, someone for Keith Hernandez or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be like that. It can be that more of you came to
Yeah.
play.
Well, it's interesting because that same grandmother that passed at that time, that was the first energy that I could access with a Ouija board. So, like, you know, it's
Oh,
very interesting. I think that that must be some connection with the guides and with my guides, my personal guides. She must be sort of on my team of players somewhere in terms of that. So that's super interesting that
of
it comes up.
course. And I think I'm sure you've done your research into other things as well as I have, like that a lot of times those guides that we have, they're a team that can get new players on that team.
Absolutely. Yep.
They can add when someone you love dies.
Yep. Yeah. So cool.
They can
Nice.
add to that group. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. It's been really refreshing too to have this conversation, like be reminded of that. That's so I can literally see the first drawing that I could draw that like was of the quality I wanted to draw. So it's really
Oh
a nice
yeah.
memory.
And another thing I remember too is when you were telling that story, I have a friend from the San Diego area because I used to channel a lot in San Diego, and I met all these people, and they became like my core group that I would channel for when I first started. And one of the women I met down there, she eventually started channeling a dragon or a dragon collective or something. But before that, she started channeling this art, and she was like, I have no artistic ability,
Hmm.
and now look what I'm drawing. And I would see it and I'd go like, oh yeah, I couldn't do that.
Yeah,
You know, I couldn't just make that up. Like it's crazy what how it unfolds for people, this whole channeling experience. I think it's meant to be different for everyone, and it typically is.
totally agree.
Okay, now I'll let you go.
No,
Um,
now I'll ask you where people can find you.
yeah, that too. No, I knew that. We'll go get back to that part, but we have to do this again.
Yes, absolutely.
So uh, Daniel Scranton is my name. Yeah, just like The Office. That's Scranton, and the show The Office. So danielscranton.com is my website. And like Jesse said, you can go on there and you can get on my mailing list and you'll get a free Archangel Michael meditation too when you do. And it's set to this new age music that a friend of mine channeled, named I think I pronounced her name right, Anita or Aneta, because she changed it to that. Char, Char, and she's a brilliant musician, and she did this music just for this meditation, so it's really nice. And with it now, like I said, I don't channel new messages every day, but when I am working, I get 5 out a week typically that are brand new that come out. And the ones I put out that aren't brand new, they're timeless ones. So that's what you get delivered to your inbox every day when you sign up for that newsletter. And then I also have my channeling course that I'm starting April 17th. It's my big, long channeling course that I started doing a few years ago, where we meet, and Jesse and I used to meet like this for the spiritual business one.
Yeah, it
So
was
she knows
great.
all about it. It's 2 hours a month. So we split them up into 1 month at a time, so you can work on what you're getting in each. So you can have the 2 hour first channeling class, and then use that to start growing as a channeler. And then we add more elements to it in each of the subsequent months. So it winds up being an 18-hour course, where even if you can't attend live because you live in some weird place like Italy and you can't
I was at a lot of them, let's say.
you were. I know. I love that you did show up too, because it's really nice to see people's faces when you're teaching. And that one is recorded too, so you get the video recording afterwards that will be sent out if you can't make it to any of them live. And I also set up a private Facebook group for the people in it. That's optional, it's not mandatory, but if they wanted to meet up and then practice with each other, because with channeling, if you don't have anyone to do it with, it kind of sucks, because it really helps to be able to have somebody there
Yeah.
to like hold space for you, pull it through you, ask questions, give you feedback, give you confirmation, all that stuff that you can only get when you're doing it for another person. So I like the group to be able to come together if they want to, and trade emails and practice with each other.
Wonderful. And you've been doing this teaching channeling for a long time. So, like you said, there's
Yeah.
hundreds of people who've come through this and definitely,
Oh
have,
yeah,
have
I've had
benefited from
hundreds
that.
of people in that course, and worked with people individually. And that's at danielscranton.com/mega, by the way, to get on that, to sign up for it. So yeah.
Nice. Whew. So exciting. I'm so
It went
excited for
by
everyone who's going to
so
sign up for your
fast.
course. I'm excited for everyone who's going to get on your mailing list and see all these amazing and I'm
And
like,
I'm always
I did your
excited
business
to.
course, because I'm so impressed with the quantity of what you produce. But I will also have to say that I am not working 8 hours a day and I do not want to. And therefore, that's the acceleration that I'll have on my end, but I'm totally
Yeah.
in admiration for your ability to produce everything you produce. It's amazing.
I have a really good discipline about
Yeah.
me. Like, I've been a raw vegan for almost as long as I've been channeling now.
Wow.
Even longer if you include the 6 years I did it in my 20s. So it's really kind of easy for me to. I also used to work out 4 hours a day. Like, I used
Wow.
to have that kind of discipline too.
Amazing.
So yeah, I for some reason was born like determined to do things,
You got a mission for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And yes, we definitely absolutely will do it again.
And I have to
Hoping that the show will
resume.
grow and that people will, want to come back and have you on again. And it'll be super fun. And then we can get into like even more details on all these aspects of the nitty gritty of the secret life of channels, right?
The Secret Life of Channels. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good movie.
Nice. All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. It's great being here.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end of this episode, and for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's people just like you that keep me motivated to bring you more and more enlightened content to the world. I'd like to invite you to consider joining my mailing list, even if you're already following me on YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anywhere else that we're publishing content. This is because once you're on my mailing list, I'm sure that I don't have to depend on an external service in order to keep in touch with you. I have to admit that I don't send out a newsletter that frequently, but when I do, it's to let you know about special events or coupons, new podcast episodes, courses and workshops I'm creating, opportunities to meet in person, like at the summer retreat that I'm currently organizing here in Italy, or even just to share some new Vagrein coaching or healing content. I do send out 2 free chapters of my book, Vagrein Seeking Ends When Sharing Begins, whenever someone signs up for the newsletter, so maybe that's some more incentive for you. And I'd love to see you on my list so that we can keep in touch no matter what.
Oh, here it is. Oh, you're going to love this one. You're going to love this one. Now, looking at me now, it might not be a huge surprise to people, but back in my 20s, because I do have a certain look, about me, but back in my 20s, I loved going to nightclubs, and I lived across the street from Fenway Park in Boston, and on Lansdowne Street, which is right behind Fenway Park, there's nightclub after nightclub after nightclub. And I worked at one for a summer, and I got to know like everybody who worked there. And my best friend was a bar back there. So I went there after I quit after one summer of working there. But I would go there like every Friday and Saturday night for years. And I basically became this like character that would put on leather pants, cowboy boots, some kind of like frilly shirt, like some kind of rock starry shirt. And I found at the clothing district in Cambridge, I think it is where it is, in a pile of clothes where you buy clothes by the pound, I found a faux fur coat that was white and full length. And it was way too small for me. And I would put on this outfit and sunglasses and walk down the street from my apartment, which is also above a bar, with my friends. Typically, hopefully I wasn't doing this by myself. Some nights I'm sure I was. But first we'd tie one on in the apartment and then walk down the street and walk into the club and walk straight to the stage where I would stand, because they had concerts there too, but there was a stage that you could get up on and dance and look down at the dance floor on. So I would go to the middle of that stage and take my white fur coat off and do this, and then flip it behind me, and then dance for the next 2 hours. And that was my life back in my 20s.
Awesome. I do like that. But can you remember the name of any of the songs? What kind of music was it? Yes.
You know what's funny though is that back before the Macarena became like this really annoying thing, it was a song they played in that club, and nobody did whatever the dance was that was part of it. Nobody did that, but it was this song that I remember from that day, and I remember a lot of the songs from that time. Yeah, for sure. But a lot of times it didn't matter. Like whatever song was on, I was dancing to it. I didn't care.